Steps to completing the square. Okay, the first step, move all terms involving x to one side of the equation, everything else to the other side. Okay, so we want x's on one side, everything else on the other. Step 2, you're going to take half of the x term, you're going to square it and add to both sides. And then step 3, you'll rewrite the side involving x, and then we'll solve the equation. So let's go ahead and jump in with an example here. This is actually a problem that I could have factored if I wanted to. Okay, but I'm not going to factor, I'm actually going to complete this square. So we're going to go through the 3 steps. The first step is to move all terms, okay, involving x to one side of the equation, move everything else to the other side. So in this equation, I'm going to leave the x squared and the 10x on the left, and then I'm going to leave a space. So if you're wondering why did I do that, yes, there is a reason. And then I'm going to go ahead and move the 11 to the other side. So that's step 1. X is on the left side, everything else on the other. Now a little tidbit, and we won't run into a problem in the first view. This x squared term has to be 1. Okay, so it has to be 1x squared in order for this to work. So now, step 2, take half of the x term. The x term is positive 10. So what is half of positive 10?
5.
Positive 5. And I'm going to square that, and I'm going to add that to both sides. So far, so good? Step 3 was rewrite the side involving x. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to do reverse factoring. And this is how I'm going to reverse factor. I'm going to take the first term that's squared here, and I'm going to take the second term that's squared here, and I'm going to square that entire quantity. Now if I were to FOIL that out, I will get this x squared plus 10x plus 25. So this is kind of like reverse factoring. You take the first term squared and the last term squared. You're not getting rid of the 10x, because when you FOIL this out, you will get 10x. On the right side, I need to add those two numbers together. What is 5 squared? So if I add that to 11, what do I get? 36. Okay. So now we need to solve that and get 2 solutions if we can. So in order to solve this, I'm going to undo a square, which means I'm going to take a square root. What's the most important thing whenever you take the square root? Plus or minus. Okay. That's the most important thing. You cannot forget that plus or minus. Now on the left side, when you take a square root of something that's squared, you're left with just x plus 5. Okay. On the right side, what is the square root of 36? 6. So then now what I need to do is I need to go ahead and subtract 5 from both sides. So I end up getting negative 5 plus or minus 6. Now there are actually 2 solutions here. The first solution is negative 5 plus 6, and the second solution is negative 5 minus 6. So what is negative 5 plus 6 going to be? What is negative 5 minus 6? Negative 11. And so those are your 2 solutions. And in fact, if we were to factor this, it would factor x plus 11 times x minus 1, and it would give us these 2 answers. Okay, so let's go and look at the next one. What? So we're going to go ahead and look at another one here. X squared minus 10x minus 24 equals 0. Move the 24 over. That's our first step. So I've got x squared minus 10x. I'm going to leave a space equals 24. Now I'm going to look at my x term here. I'm going to take half of that. What is half of negative 10? Negative 5. So watch how I'm going to write that. There's a reason why I'm putting that negative there. Okay. Now the next step, remember, was that reverse factoring. And so what will go inside the parentheses? X and the -5. See, that's why I put that -5 there, so we would not forget the negative sign. On the right side, if I square -5, I still get a positive 25. So what is 24 plus 25? 49. Okay. So now to solve it, let's square root. Plus or minus. On the left side, what are you left with? On the right side, you have plus or minus 7. So now I'm going to go ahead and add 5 to both sides. So I end up getting x to equal 5 plus or minus 7. So I've got two solutions. The first solution is 5 plus 7. Second solution will be 5 minus 7. So my two answers are 12 and -2. Okay. So we've looked at some problems that are, I want to say easy, okay, but they are easier to do. They will not always be nice and neat because sometimes you're going to get some square roots. So let's look at this one. What's the first step going to be to do? Move the 5 over. Now, if you remember, there was one thing I specifically said. Do you remember what it was? You can only have a 1x squared. I've got a 2x squared. So what do you think I'm going to have to do? Divide through everything by a 2. So really I get x squared minus 7/2 x equals -5/2. So now I'm going to take half of the middle term. Here's the easy way to take half of a fraction. You take the denominator times 2. Okay, so here's my middle term, right? Take that denominator times 2, and what do you get? -7/4. And I'm going to square that, and I'm going to add that to both sides. On the left side, what will I get? X and minus 7/4 quantity squared. Because remember, you take whatever the first term is squared, whatever the last term is squared. On the right side, I need to add those together. So -7/4 squared is actually 49/16. And so if I add that to -5/2, what do I get as an improper fraction? You don't want mixed numbers here.
89/16.
Almost, it's a -5/2. Don't add them. What? 9/16. Yep. So now, how do you solve that? Square root. Important thing is the plus or minus. So on the left you have x minus 7/4. On the right, here's the easy way to do that. Square root of 9 over square root of 16. So the square root of 9 is 3, as you've already said. Square root of 16 is 4. So see, this actually doesn't turn out too bad, because now if I add 7/4 to both sides, I end up getting x to equal 7/4 plus or minus 3/4. So yeah, so if I take 7 plus 3 divided by 4, I get 10/4. What is 7 minus 3? 4/4. Now I can simplify each of those. What will each of those simplify to be? 5/2 and 1. The thing about completing this square it generally works a lot more than factoring does. Factoring only works with certain problems. Let's go ahead and look at, we're going to look at one more. Sorry, we'll go back here to this one. I want to look at this one right here. Okay? And then tomorrow at the start of class we'll pick up, we'll look at 2 more, and then that'll be it for this lesson. So can somebody tell me what my first step is going to look like? Yep, x squared
Plus 8
equals
20.
negative 22. Okay, so far so good. Yep, so 4 squared to both sides. Okay, so I've taken half of the 8, and then I've squared it and added to both sides. What am I left with on the left side?
X plus 4.
X plus 4 quantity squared. On the right side, what do I get?
0 plus 16.
Negative 6.
6, right.
Okay, now in the past we haven't been able to do this, now we can, based on what we learned on Tuesday. So if I take the square root now, I end up getting x plus 4 equals plus or minus, how can I write that?
2.
Negative 6i.
Square root, negative 6i, or 6i.
Square root of 6i. Remember, we just take that negative out. Now, if I broke 6 down, I just get 2 and 3. I have no pairs. So as a result, it stays root 6i. And then what's the last step going to be to do? Subtract 4. Okay? So I end up having x to equal negative 4 plus or minus root 6i. And this is where factoring doesn't work. Okay? But completing the square does. So I'm going to save 2 problems for tomorrow to kind of get us going and get our minds thinking tomorrow. But here you go. On page 260, this is what you need to do. 30 through 46 evens. Now you're looking at having a quiz that will involve this stuff either tomorrow or Monday. Okay? Either tomorrow or Monday you're going to have a quiz and it will have completing the square on it.
You can use our notes.
Yes, you can use your notes.